In this video, we are going to talk about solving an equation using the order of operations in reverse. So first, let's just review the order of operations. You might remember this as PEMDAS, but that takes away some of the operations that we're going to be using, especially in Math 3. So I'm going to share out just the order of operations that I like to use. The first thing in any order of operations is groups. So that's going to include parentheses. That's going to include brackets. That's going to include anything under a radical symbol. So it's going to include anything that is grouped together. The second thing is I like to call these special operations. So that's things like basically anything that's not one of the four. So that's exponents, that's sine and cosine, that's logarithms, that's square roots, anything that's not the four main ones. The next step is all your multiplication and division, and that's one step altogether. Multiplying and dividing, all one step. And then the fourth step is adding and subtracting. And again, that's all one step. You just go left to right with those operations. So the order of operations is really only 4 sections. And if there's more than one of these things, you just go in order from left to right. Let's look at how we can use that to solve an equation like 2x minus 3 over 7 equals 5. So just like inverse functions, inverse operations, solving an equation means we're going to use this backwards. So we're going to undo all of these things going backwards. Now, because, so first we'll undo addition and subtraction. However, because this 2x minus 3 is stuck inside this group symbol, we actually aren't going to touch it just yet. So we're going to skip right over that because there's no addition and subtraction that's not in a group. This 2x minus 3 actually comes all the way up here to groups. Okay, so we are no addition and subtraction outside the group. Multiplication and division. Since this problem is divided by 7, the inverse operation will be to multiply both sides by 7. Whatever you do to one side of the equation, you do to the other side of the equation. 5 times 7 is 35. Now 7 divided by 7 makes 1. And we're left with the square root of 2x minus 3 on this side of the equation. The next step that we're going to do is the inverse of a square root. So we can't do any more multiplication and division. We've done it because all of these are in a grouping symbol. So what we're going to have to do then is special operations. So square rooting, the inverse of square rooting is squared. So whatever we do to one side of the equation, we do to the other. So I'm going to square both sides of the equation. Now, when you square root something and then you square it, you do the operation and then you undo the operation, you're left with 2x minus 3. And then 35 squared is 1,225. Now, this was a group. So the last thing we do is any kind of groups, we need to anything inside the group. So now we have reached groups. Now we're going to undo everything in the group. And when we undo everything in the group, we go back to the bottom again and we undo addition and subtraction, undo multiplication and division, undo. So we kind of start this process over now that we're working in the group. These parentheses here are no longer necessary. I just wanted to remind us that this was a group. So adding and subtracting, the inverse of this subtracting 3 is to add 3 on both sides. So we're going to have 2x equals 5 plus 3 is 8. 1, 2, 2, 8. And then finally, this is multiplication. Even though we don't write it here when we have 2 and x next to each other, and the inverse of multiplication is division. So we divide both sides by 2. This will give us 1. So we're just left with x equals whatever 1,228 divided by 2 is, which is 614. The way we check our answer, which is always important, is that we then replace x with that number and we plug it in to our equation and we see if it's true. Now, when we plug in, we then follow the order of operations as it's written. So we do everything inside the group first. So everything inside the radical. Inside the radical, we multiply before we subtract. So we do 2 times 614. We get 1,228. I'm not writing it all because I don't have space. We subtract 3. We get the square root of 1,225. We square root before we divide. Special operations comes before multiplication and division. The square root of 1,225 is 35, and 35 divided by 7 is 5. So since we divided and we got 5, we know that we have the right answer.